What is going on, you guys? It is your girl, Dayna Patreace, aka the Black Fairy, and I am here with another video. As I've been promising, today we are finally going to do the read and review for When God Was a Woman. Um, I I've been teetering about like how I should do it. Should I read the introduction, chapter 1 and 2? Should I read the back just as an introduction and then one or two? But I think I finally decided that I'm just going to read the back and then we're just going to hop right straight into the chapters. I don't want these to be too long, so depending on how things are going with the video, um we will see. Kind of like, I don't want them to be over an hour. So if reading one chapter and reviewing that one chapter takes long, then I'll just do a chapter at a time, or at least under that kind of like time frame. So we'll see, guys. But before we get into it, I'm just gonna run the music, the opening video, and we will be right back.
Yes, I fall in love with myself and I want someone to share it with me. I want someone to share me with me.
Hey, you guys. Can you guys hear me? Okay, I think I'm live again. Great. So, as I was saying, we are going to read When God Was a Woman, the landmark exploration of the ancient worship of God, great goddess, and eventual blah blah blah, and the eventual suppression of women's rights. This is by Merlin Stone. As I was kind of saying in the introduction there, I was really like, how should I read this book? Should I just come with a review? Should I read a little bit and as I go, we review? And ultimately, I decided that I wanted to read a little bit and go into the review from my standpoint for what we're reading. I really haven't seen anything like this on YouTube, so I wondered, like, is this even allowed? But it's not like I'm reading it in the sense of giving you the chapters for free. This is a read and review. So although I'll be reading, I will be stopping to create commentary. So I'm hoping that it will go under the kind of like um, same rights as if I were doing critiquing someone who made a video or something like that in regards to the Fair Use Act. But I guess we'll find out, right? But I really do want to get into this book. Um, as I've stated in other videos, I want to explore women's history. What was the world like before we had patriarchy? You know, what was the world like before this? And I know that men would have us believe that this is the thing, the way it's always been. In fact, they say that this is just the way it is. This is nature. But the more that I research, the more that I realize that this is not nature at all. Okay, this has nothing to do with nature. And I want us to really take a look into that, right? So I'm going to read the back of the book before we get into the chapter. Again, I was teetering whether I should read the introduction, but I think the back of the book is a very good introduction enough. And then we will start right at chapter 1. Okay? Um, so let's get into it. So it says, in the beginning, God was a woman. Here is an invitation to discover a past that has been buried by millennia of Judeo-Christian myth and corresponding social order. Merlin Stone tells us, in fascinating detail, the story of the goddess who, known by many names such as Astarte, Isis, and Ishtar, reigned supreme in the near Middle East. There, she was revered as the wise creator and the one source of universal order, not simply as a fertility symbol, as some histories would have us believe. And under the goddess, societal roles differed markedly from those in patriarchal Judeo Christian cultures. Women bought and sold property, traded in the marketplace, and inherited title and land from their mothers. How did the shift from matriarchy to patriarchy come about? By documenting the wholesale rewriting of myth and religious dogmas, Merlin Stone describes an ancient conspiracy in which the goddess was reimagined as a wanton, depraved figure, a characterization confirmed and perpetuated by one of the modern culture's best known legends, that of Adam and the fallen Eve. Insightful and thought provoking, this is essential reading for anyone interested in the origin of the current gender roles and in rediscovering women's power. And then there's just a quote here, right? And it says, a powerful book and a thoroughly fascinating study. Merlin Stone, a teacher of art and art history, as well as a widely exhibited sculptor, became interested in archaeology and ancient religion through her art. She has produced pieces on the goddess for both radio and the stage, and conceived and organized goddess festivals in both New York and Toronto. Okay? So that was the back of the book, that we just get an introduction into what we're seeing here. And if you've been listening to my last couple of videos, it definitely aligns with my new purpose and my new alignment with the freedom of women's minds across the globe. That's how I feel right now, anyways, as a part of my purpose. I feel like in order to unlearn and relearn, we need to know exactly what we need to unlearn, which is the history. Like, we have to understand where we came from and our place, and we have to face the lies that we've been told in order for us to be enslaved the way that we have. And I've said this before, we are the first slaves, ladies. We are the first slaves. And I'm going to do another video that kind of highlights on this. I'm also going to do a video that we're going to go in and we're going to dissect the story of Adam and Eve. So there's a lot to come. As you can see, reading this book has opened my mind to a plethora of ideas that I would like for us to explore. And I hope that you are interested as well. As I said, I'm looking for my goddess tribe. So I would like for us to be able to come together in this way and truly come together in understanding and make the spiritual shift that needs to happen in order for us to set a correct course into the age of Aquarius, into 5D, which I believe will come from the divine feminine. I'm just going to play this one video and then we will get into chapter 1.
Hey, you guys, it's your girl, Dayna Patreace, aka the Black Fairy. And I am just here to remind you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, okay? Click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos or any new lives, okay? I will be coming here with more and more information. So please, you don't want to miss out. And this is just a quick reminder and a quick thank you, because it's a free way to support the channel and to support me. I love y'all.
Okay, and we're back. I do know that you guys can't see me right now. I did want to be on screen for this. This is why I kind of dragged my feet. However, Mercury in retrograde shadow period is kicking my butt. My things aren't working. Things are broken. I have no ring light. And, some people don't care about that aspect. But you know what? I care. I care. That being said, I wasn't going to allow those excuses to stop me from being consistent with the videos that I want to make on this channel. So I'm going to head forward. So although I don't have good lighting, thanks to StreamYard, I do not need to worry about that. But yeah, we could definitely get into this. So we're going to start with chapter 1. And chapter 1 is called Tales with a Point of View. Okay? So again, so you guys understand, I am reading this from the book, but I'm also going to be stopping to give commentary. This is a read and review, so you will not be hearing me read just consecutively as if this is an audiobook. All right? So again, chapter 1, Tales with a Point of View. Though we live amid high-rise steel buildings, formica countertops, and electronic television screens, there is something in all of us, women and men alike, that makes us feel deeply connected with the past. Perhaps the sudden dampness of a beach cave, or the lines of sunlight piercing through the intricate lace patterns of the leaves in a darkened grove of tall trees, will awaken from the hidden recesses of our minds the distant echoes of a remote and ancient time, taking us back to early stirrings of human life on the planet. For people raised and programmed on the patriarchal religions of today, religions that affect us in even the most secular aspects of our society, perhaps there remains a lingering, almost innate memory of sacred shrines and temples tended by priestesses who served in the religion of the original supreme deity. In the beginning, people prayed to the creatress of life, the mistress of heaven. At the very dawn of religion, God was a woman. Do you remember? Now, I loved this intro because it begins by pointing out the human nature in the searching and even being enamored with the past, which for me has been very, very true. Even when I was leaving Christianity and I wanted to explore what else was out there, wanted to explore beyond what I had been taught, the past was how I really made the decision that I made in order to not be a religious person, right? Understanding how white supremacy utilizes Christianity and patriarchy made me uncomfortable with following through with these beliefs and maintaining these beliefs as I further and further understood how religion was created and used for not only the demise of Black people, but for the demise of women as well. Okay, so I really loved that she pointed that out, especially because people who are religious and in a patriarchal led religion, they definitely are raised and programmed, right? Me growing up as a Seventh day Adventist can definitely clock in on that. I was heavily carrying a lot of internalized misogyny, right? So we're going to continue though. So for years, something has magnetically lured me. This is Miss Stone talking of herself, into exploring the legends, the temple sites, the statues, and the ancient rituals of the female deities, drawing me back to a time and to an age when the goddess was omnipotent and women acted as her clergy, controlling the form and rites of religion. So that was always, it was very interesting to me, because as I said, growing up in church, women were never allowed to. It's only now and even in like the early past that we see them making changes to these things. Like they would never really look at a woman who could truly be a prophetess or be a pastor. In fact, they use certain scriptures to deny women that right, right? But according to what she's found, it was well within our rights and it was in our control at first. Perhaps it was my training and work as a sculptor that first exposed me to the sculptures of the goddess found in the ruins of the prehistoric sanctuaries and the earliest dwellings of human beings. Perhaps it was a certain romantic mysticism, which once embarrassed me, but to which I now happily confess that led me over the years into the habit of collecting information about the early female religions and the veneration of female deities. Occasionally, I tried to dismiss my fascination with this subject as overly fanciful and certainly disconnected from my work. I was building electronic sculptural environments at the time. Nevertheless, I would find myself continuously pursuing archaeology journals and poring over texts in museums or university library stacks. As I read, I recalled that somewhere along the pathway of my life, I had been told and accepted the idea that the sun, great and powerful, was naturally worshipped as male, while the moon, hazy, delicate symbol of sentiment and love, had always been revered as female. Much to my surprise, I discovered accounts of sun goddesses in the lands of Canaan, Anatolia, Arabia, and Australia, while sun goddesses amongst the Eskimos, the Japanese, and the Kasisis of India were accompanied by subordinate brothers who were symbolized as the moon. I had somewhere assimilated the idea that the earth was invariably identified as female, Mother Earth, the one who passively accepts the seed, while heaven was naturally and inherently male, its intangibility symbolic of the supposedly exclusive male ability to think in abstract concepts. This too I had accepted without question, until I learned that nearly all the female deities of Near and Middle East were titled Queen of Heaven. And in Egypt, not only was the ancient goddess Nut known as the heavens, but her brother husband, Geb, was symbolized as the earth. So you can see here, by her own curiosities on this topic and how she continuously pursues these journals and more information, that she goes into this deep dive of finding goddesses who had the same roles in history. Okay? She said, most astonishing of all was the discovery of numerous accounts of female creators of all existence, divinities who were credited with bringing forth not only the first people, but the entire earth and the heaven above. There were records of such goddesses in Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, Africa, Australia, and China. In India, the goddess Sarasvati was honored as the inventor of the original alphabet, while on Celtic Ireland, the goddess Bridget was esteemed as a patron deity of language. Text revealed that it was goddess Nidaba in Sumer who was paid honor as the one who initially invented clay tablets and the art of writing. She appeared in that position earlier than any of the male deities who later replaced her. The official scribe of the Sumerian heaven was a woman, but most significant was the archaeological evidence of the earliest examples of written language so far discovered. These were also located in Sumer at the temple of the Queen of Hemen Erech, written there over 5,000 years ago. Though writing is most often said to have been invented by man, however that may be defined, the combination of the above factors presents a most convincing argument that it may have actually been women who pressed those first meaningful marks into wet clay, right? And I feel like we inherently know this on a certain level of being. They're proving it with archaeology and science every day. We know that the oldest bones ever found were that of a woman, right? Do they call her Lucy? I can't recall at this time. But the first bones ever were a woman, oldest bones ever, found in Ethiopia. So a Black woman at that, right? Black women have a gene called the Eve gene, right? Where we carry all of the DNA that can be found in every human being. However, only the Black woman carries it. No other race of woman carries this. Only the melanated woman, right? So when you think about that, how does that contrast with what we've been taught, right? She goes on to discuss a lot of different things that we're going to get into. But basically, it's even according to her early findings, even in this first chapter, women were the inventors and the originators of many things that men claim they created. I'm excited to see where this book will lead us in regards to what else, because this is just the beginning. Continuing on. In agreement with the generally accepted theory that women were responsible for the development of agriculture as an extension of their food gathering activities, there were female deities everywhere who were credited with this gift to civilization. In Mesopotamia, where some of the earliest evidences of agriculture development have been found, sorry if I'm stuttering over these words, the goddess Ninlil was revered for having provided her people with an understanding of planting and harvesting methods. In nearly all areas of the world, female deities were exalted as healers, dispensers of curative herbs, roots, plants, and other medical aids, casting the priestesses who attended the shrines into the role of physicians of those who worshiped there. Some legends describe the goddess as a powerful, courageous warrior, a leader in battle. The worship of the goddess was a valiant warrior seems to have been responsible for numerous reports of female soldiers, later referred to by the classical Greeks as the Amazon. More thoroughly examining the accounts of the esteem the Amazons paid to the female deity, it became evident that women who worshipped a warrior goddess hunted and fought in the lands of Libya, Anatolia, Bulgaria, Greece, Armenia, and Russia, and were far from the mythical fantasy so many writers of today would have us believe, right? So this discussion she's having, that she's looking into everything, finding out that women are in fact responsible for agriculture, female deities that were credited with the gift of civilization, female warriors. I recently did a video on the goddesses of war and how rage can totally be feminine, right? We've been told that it is our role to be soft. We don't know anything of war and battle, but that could be nothing but further from the truth as you dig more into it. Women were the ones who did these things. Even, and I wish I could find the video, and perhaps I'll do a video that discusses this on its own, where I can share this video where a guy reports that there are several matriarchies where the women were the best hunter and gatherers, just like this book explains, that it was the women and the grandmothers that taught hunting, and that the women were the best, not because they were bigger and stronger, as men would have you believe that's as to why they are the best, but because women work together. Women are willing to work together. They work together to catch their prey, whereas men, they have this ego within them that won't allow them to work with others. If they do, it's usually one other male, right? You can even see this in the kingdom of the animal, the kingdom of the animal kingdom, with lions and lionesses. The lionesses hunt together, males, usually one or two, maybe three, right? But they are not the better hunters. The lioness are the better hunters. And if you look back beyond the years of patriarchy and look at this, at the many civilizations who ran as a matriarchy, you will see the same thing, right? Let's continue. I could not help noticing how far removed from contemporary images were the prehistoric and the most ancient historic attitudes towards the thinking capacities, intellect of woman. For nearly everywhere, the goddess was revered as a wise counselor and prophetess. The Celtic Cerediwin was the goddess of intelligence and knowledge. In the pre Christian legends of Ireland, the priestesses of the goddess Gaia provided the wisdom of divine revelation at pre Greek sanctuaries, while the Greek Demeter and the Egyptian Isis were both invoked as lawgivers and sage dispensers of righteousness, wisdom, counsel, and justice. The Egyptian goddess Ma'at represented the very order, rhythm, and truth of the universe. Ishtar of Mesopotamia was referred to as the directress of people, the prophetess, the lady of vision, while the archaeological records of the city of Nimrud, where Ishtar was worshipped, revealed that women served as judges and magistrates in the courts of law. The more I read, the more I discovered. The worship of female deities appeared in every area of the world, presenting an image of woman that I had never before encountered. As a result, I began to ponder upon the power of the myth and eventually to perceive these legends as more than the innocent childlike fables that they first appeared to be. They were tales with a most specific point of view. Myths represent ideas that guide perception, conditioning us that to think and even perceive in a particular way, especially when we are young and impressionable. Often they portray the actions of people who are rewarded or punished for their behavior. And we are encouraged to view these as examples to emulate or avoid. So many of the stories told to us from the time we were just old enough to understand deeply affect our attitudes and comprehension of the world about us and ourselves. Our ethics, morals, conduct, values, sense of duty, and even sense of humor are often developed from simple childhood parables and fables. From them, we learn what is socially acceptable in the society from which they come. They define good and bad, right and wrong, what is natural and what is unnatural among the people who hold the myths as meaningful. It was quite apparent that the myths and legends that grew from and were propagated by a religion in which the deity was female and revered as wise, valiant, powerful, and just provided very different images of womanhood from those which we are offered by the male oriented religions of today, right? So the more that she read, the more that she discovered in these books, right? And I feel that. And I feel that because that's exactly how I felt. The way that this book connects to my higher self is not something that I can truly, truly, truly explain to y'all where it will make sense, just because it's simply hard to explain. But when I started my journey of discovery, even discovering the goddesses, right? Leaving Christianity, wanting to explore other ideas, it was just so beautiful to see the feminine counterparts to these male deities, to see the strength of these women, even though at that time I had not really truly understood as I do now. I'm going to continue, but before I do, we're just going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab some water, actually, and we will get back into the rest of this chapter.
Hey, y'all. Do you need a gratitude journal? Well, if you do, me, myself, and I, Dayna Patreace, aka the Black Fairy, have gratitude journals available for sale in the link below. They go for $6.99 USD, and no worries. By clicking the link in the bio, it will send you straight to your country and to your currency. So don't worry about that. But just to give you a rough estimate, it is $6.99. Now, if you didn't know, gratitude is one of the best ways to not only affirm what it is that you want in your life, but to affirm what it is you want to see in your life. With that being said, this is a great tool and opportunity for you to take a part of. It's an inexpensive way for you to tap into the law of attraction. I highly, highly recommend it. And I love y'all. Link in the bio below.
Okay, so we are back. Thank you to everyone if you're still here. I hope you're leaving comments. I would love to know what your thoughts are on this book so far. Maybe you're resonating with a lot of what I'm saying. Let me know. But we're going to continue, and there's not too many pages left. I'm already seeing that we're at the 30-minute mark here. So I definitely probably will just be reading chapter 1, and we'll read chapter 2 next week. All right, y'all. But let's get into this, right? So, where I left off. So, it says a fortnight after the creation of the universe. As I considered as I considered the power of myth, it became increasingly difficult to avoid questioning the influential effects that the myths accompanying the religions that worship male deities had upon my own image of what it meant to be born a female, another Eve, progenitress of my childhood faith. As a child, I was told that Eve had been made from Adam's rib, brought into being to be his companion and helpmate, to keep him from being lonely, as if this assignment was as if this assignment of permanent second mate, never to be captain, was not oppressive enough to my future plans as a developing member of society. I next learned that Eve was considered to be foolishly gullible. My elders explained that she had been easily tricked by the promises of the perfidious serpent. She defied God and provoked Adam to do the same, thus ruining a good thing, the previously blissful life in the Garden of Eden. Why Adam himself was never thought to be equally as foolish was apparently never worth discussing. But identifying with Eve, who was presented as the symbol of all women, the blame was in some mysterious way mine. And God, viewing the whole affair as my fault, chose to punish me by decreeing, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children, yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Genesis 3, verses 16. So even as a young girl, I was taught that because of Eve, when I grew up, I was to bear my children in pain and suffering, as this was not sufficient penalty. Instead of receiving compassion, sympathy, or admiring respect for my courage, I was to experience this pain with guilt. The sin of my wrongdoing laid heavily upon me as punishment for simply being a woman, a daughter of Eve. To make matters worse, I was also supposed to accept the idea that men, as symbolized by Adam, in order to prevent any further foolishness on my part, were presented with the right to control me, to rule over me. According to the omnipotent male deity, whose righteousness and wisdom I was expected to admire and respect with a reverent awe, men were far wiser than women. Thus, my penitent, submissive position as a female was firmly established by page 3 of the nearly 1,000 pages of the Judeo-Christian Bible. Let me tell you how this never made sense to me. This was also the story that was given to me. So I'm heavily resonating with what she's saying and what she's speaking on in this first chapter, as it's very much what I had been through myself in my own childhood, as far as what I was meant to believe about women, the origins of women and men, and the origins of men, and why things are that the way that they are, given such and just foolishness, right? And I sometimes look back and I'm like, how could I believe such foolishness? But again, it was a program that was instilled on me from a very young age. I was born into the church. So being born into the church, this is what was instilled into me. And it's very frustrating looking back, but I know that I needed to go through that in order to become who I am, even to have the life lessons to be able to sit here and speak to you in this position now. So as much as it's irritating, there is a beauty to it that I am willing to, you know, take in. But the original decree of male supremacy was only the beginning. The myth describing Eve's folly was not to be forgotten or ignored. We then studied the words of the prophets of the New Testament, who repeatedly utilized the legend of the loss of paradise to explain and even prove the natural inferiority of women. The lessons learned in the Garden of Eden were impressed upon us over and over again. Man was created first. Woman was made for only man. Only man was made in God's image. According to the Bible and those who accepted it as the divine word, the male God favored men and had indeed designed them as naturally superior. Even now, I cannot help wondering how many times those passages from the New Testament were read from the authoritative position of a Sunday pulpit or from the family Bible that had been pulled down from the shelf by father or husband and a pious woman listened to. That the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach or to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. For Adam was first formed and then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was the transgression. 1 Timothy 2:11, verse 14. You see the BS right there, though? Because that's not exactly how the story went down at all. And just as people came together to create these ideals in order to gain control of the minds of the people of our civilizations that they were taking over and colonizing, you have to believe that this really wasn't the case now that we know and looking back. And in a lot of ways, this story doesn't make any sense, which is why in my next video, I will be dissecting the story of Adam and Eve, right? Because it's absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Because even in this verse, it says Adam was not deceived. Yes, he was. He allowed himself to be deceived by Eve. He was deceived. And let's be real, he should have known better because he had been in the garden longer. Not to mention that this is the story only given halfway through because Eve was not Adam's first wife. His first wife was Lilith. So we're going to get into all of these things in other videos. Right now, we're just doing the read and review. Okay, so we're going to get back into it. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Let the woman keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, so saith the law. And if they learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for a woman to speak in a church. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3, 7, and 9. You guys, I said that, right? I touched on that a little bit earlier on. I didn't remember that she was going to touch on it in this first chapter. But absolutely, right? They use certain verses to hold you to the ideals of the church and hold you into the submissiveness of what they have been taught, which is that women are terrible, men are supposed to be in charge. The last time a woman had an idea, she was the downfall of all of humankind. Like, please. Let's continue. Strangely enough, I never did become very religious despite the continual efforts of Sunday school teachers. Me too, y'all. Sunday teachers did not like me. My Sabbath school teachers really were annoyed with me because I asked too many questions because a lot of things didn't make sense even then. So again, this book, this is why I wanted to read this book. I want to find my tribe of people. I know I'm not alone. Right. So strangely enough, I never did become very religious despite the continual efforts of Sunday school teachers. In fact, by the time I reached adolescence, I had rejected most of what the organized religions had to offer. But there was still something about the myth of Adam and Eve that lingered. seeming to pervade the culture at some deeper level. It appeared and reappeared as the symbolic foundation of poems and novels. It was visually interpreted in oils by the great masters whose paintings glowed from the slide projectors in my art history courses. Products were advertised in high fashion magazines, suggesting that if a woman wore the right perfume, she might be able to pull the whole disaster off all over again. It was even the basis of a dull joke in Sunday comics. It seemed that everywhere a woman was tempting man to do wrong. Our entire society agreed. Adam and Eve defined the image of men and women. Women were inherently conniving, contriving, and dangerously sexy, while gullible and somewhat simple minded at the same time. They were in obvious need of a foreman to keep them in line, and thus divinely appointed many men, and thus divinely appointed. Many men seemed quite willing. As I began to read other myths that explain the creation of life, stories that attributed to the event to Nut or Hathor in Egypt, Namu in Ninhursag in Sumer, Mami, Tiamat, or Aruru in other parts of Mesopotamia, and Mawu in Africa, I began to view the legend of Adam and Eve as just another fable, an innocent attempt to explain what happened at the very beginning of existence. But it was not long afterward that I began to understand how specifically contrived the details of this particular myth were. In 1960, mythologist Joseph Campbell commented on the Adam and Eve myth, writing, "This curious mythological idea, and the still more curious fact that for 2,000 years it was accepted throughout the Western world as the absolutely dependable account of an event that was supposed to have taken place about a fortnight after the creation of the universe, poses forcefully the highly interesting question of influence of the conspicuously contrived counterfeit mythologies and the infections of mythology upon the structure of human belief and the consequent course of civilization." Professor Chiera points out that the Bible does not give us one creation story, but several of them. The one which happens to be featured in chapter 1 of Genesis appears to be one which had the least vogue among the common people. It was evidently produced in scholarly circles. He then discusses the differences between the religions of today and the ancient worship, saying, "Just a few years ago, we succeeded in piecing together from a large number of tablets the complete story of an ancient Sumerian myth. I used to call it the Darwinian theory of the Sumerians. The myth must have been widely circulated, for many copies of it already become to light. In common with the biblical story, a woman plays the dominant role just as Eve did. But the resemblance ends there. Poor Eve has been damned by all subsequent generations for her deed, while the Babylonians thought so much of their women ancestress that they deified her. Now, as I read these other myths, it was apparent that the archetypal woman in ancient religions, as represented by the goddess, was quite different, in many respects, from the woman Eve. I then observed that many of these origin and creation legends came from the lands of Canaan, Egypt, and Babylon, the very same lands in which the Adam and Eve myth had been developed. The other legends of creation were from the mythical religious literature of the people who did not worship the Hebrew Yahweh or Jehovah, but were in fact the closest neighbors of those early Hebrews." So that is the conclusion for chapter 1. Like I said, I didn't want to go over an hour, so I will leave this as chapter 1. It's just the beginning. It's just an introduction. I'm already super excited about what chapter 2 is going to hold next, as it is called "Who Was She?" Right? As we continue to dig and deep dive, I'm excited. I hope that you learned something. Please leave a comment. Let me know if you've read the book yourself. What did you learn from this chapter? What should people look forward from other chapters? Just leave it all below. Before we go, I do want to just play a quick clip and we'll get into the conclusion.
Hey, you guys, it's your girl, Dayna Patreace, aka the Black Fairy. And this is just a quick reminder to please like, share, comment, okay? Subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any lives or new videos that I'm posting. And I promise to be posting more than ever now. And that is just a free way to help support me and support this channel. And it costs you nothing, okay? So without further ado, this quick reminder is now over. Thank you for watching.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. I love this book. I actually haven't finished the book. I got about a few chapters in and I decided that I wanted to read it online, hopefully find some common people, some people with common thoughts and commonality in regards to maybe reading this book or have researched or are interested in this topic of really and are interested in really just decolonizing their mind from patriarchy, to come forward and hopefully, maybe we could start a book club. It's so funny because I wanted to join this book club, but it won't take my card on Patreon. So, I came here. Hopefully we can hook up with something together. Again, we should be reading chapter 2, Who Was She, next week. I love y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. Please look out. Again, the next video after this will be a deep dive into the story of Adam and Eve. We touched a little bit on it in this first chapter, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper with some things that I've recently discovered and pieced together in regards to that story and in regards to us being programmed to this version of womanhood through, a lot of brainwashing and programming that happens through religion. So I'm excited about that. Please subscribe. I love y'all, and we will talk soon.
Yes. I fall in love with myself. And I want someone to share me with me.